What's up, folks? It's your boy Coach Ty back at you with another one, and in today's video I've got a full-on chest routine for you. And I bet you there are some things about the chest in this video that you have never heard before. Let's get straight into it. Here we go. First, there are a few key details you probably don't know about the pecs and pec training, so let's go over those first so we can get through the exercises and routine a little more quickly. 1. Unless you have a shoulder injury or experience shoulder pain, you should internally rotate your shoulders on your pec exercises. 2. Any pec exercise against the bench should be accompanied by an arch in the spine and retracting your shoulder blades. And 3, the pecs are fast twitch dominant, so they will likely respond best to heavier training. Why internally rotate the shoulders? Well, 1, it better matches the direction of the fiber of the pecs, and muscles pull in line with the direction of their fibers. 2, because of this, the pecs have better leverage to totally take over the movement and keep the front delts out of it, or as out of it as the front delts can be. Now, I can already hear some people going, but won't that hurt my shoulder? And the most honest answer here is maybe, but I can say that for every pec exercise. Most people have never done a guillotine press and they still suffer shoulder issues. People have hurt their shoulders on barbell bench presses and push-ups and even pull-ups, etc. So any exercise can get you hurt. That's why it's important to nail down the form and start slow. I have 2 key rules of thumb here. 1, let pain be your guide. If this exercise hurts your shoulder joint, slightly tuck your elbows. The other rule here is if you have a shoulder injury already, you might want to consider something else. Still give the following exercises a try at a very light weight to see if it bothers the joint, and return to rule number 1 if it does. Why the arch? Well, pulling back the shoulder blades is mainly for giving you a stable base to press from, helping you lift more weight, and also to put the shoulder joint into a safer position. Pulling back your scapula will create more room in your shoulder joint, helping you avoid any impingement. The same can be said for arching your upper spine. The arch will help you get your shoulder blades even more pressed into the bench. And quick side note on arching for the bench press, doing an arch will change the pressing angle. So if you do an arch on a low incline, you will then have changed the pressing angle to be closer to a flat bench press. For the guillotine press that we're going to come to, this is what we want. And mostly flat, very small incline. Yes, you can preferentially recruit the upper chest, but all of the pecs work together when performing pressing and fly movements. So it makes sense to do most of your work from a flat pressing angle with a sprinkle of low incline here and there. And before I break down the exercises themselves, let's go over the program. This is also where the pecs being fast twitch dominant comes into play. Fast twitch muscle fibers fatigue more quickly than their slow twitch counterparts. They also recover more slowly. So this means we don't need very many sets. And it would probably be better to train on the heavier side of things. We also don't need to train the pecs as often as we would, say, the calves or quads. That being said, here's the program along with some options. Day 1, we've got the low incline guillotine bench press, 2 to 3 sets, 6 to 10 reps, 2 to 3 reps left in the tank. Day 2, the Bayesian Pec Fly, 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 reps, 1 rep left in the tank. And day 3, wide grip push-up, 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 reps, 1 rep left in the tank. We want at least 48 to 72 hours of rest between these sessions, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example. Now, most of the content I make is for relative beginners to lifting, so if you have been lifting for some time, feel free to up the amount of sets and maybe even increase the frequency. You can increase the sets to 3 to 4 and train these exercises every 24 to 48 hours. First exercise, the guillotine bench press. Let's talk about setup. We're using a very low incline here. Any higher than this point and we'll mostly be training the front of the shoulder as opposed to the chest. Before getting the dumbbells into position, start pulling your shoulder blades back and dig them into the bench hard. Also do a slight arch in your spine, keyword being slight. We're not going for the powerlifter arch because, well, we're not powerlifting at this particular moment. You can also start pulling your shoulder blades back once the dumbbells are up, but I've found it easier to get into position first and then lift the dumbbells. Now that we're set up, let's talk about form. Start with an overhand grip. We want to flare the elbows outward as we descend the dumbbells downward. Make sure to keep your fists directly over your elbows. If your fists fall too far outward, we'll turn this into a pec fly. Too far in and we'll start recruiting more triceps. You also want to make the exercise, or you also will make the exercise much easier on the pecs by letting your forearms fall inward. The closer the dumbbell or any resistance is to the primary working joint, the less resistance there is on said joint. These are the same reasons you can press so much more than you can fly. 1, you're involving more musculature, and 2, decreasing the distance between the resistance and the active joint. So take your time, especially if you're doing this for the first time. Let your upper arm get to your sides or slightly behind you before pressing back up. We don't need to bring the dumbbells all the way back together as there is no tension on the pecs at the top. In fact, a more partial range of motion might be even better, and I put range of motion in quote marks because the term is often misunderstood. I don't want to get into that and extend the runtime of this video any further. Bottom line is, the bottom part of the range of motion, where the pec is most stretched, is the most important part of the range. If you want to know more about why, please check my video on stretch-mediated hypertrophy. Moving on to the Bayesian Pec Fly. As usual, we'll start with the setup. Make sure to place the cable at roughly shoulder height to hit the majority of the pecs. However, if you want to recruit the upper pecs a bit more, place the cable a couple of notches below shoulder height. And as you fly, go upward instead of directly forward. Also, you may have noticed I haven't talked much about the lower pecs. That's because the lower pecs and the mid pecs are technically one. So you can't really recruit the lower pecs with decline pressing. Doesn't mean decline pressing is bad at all. As my grandmother used to say, if you like it, I love it. Like we discussed earlier, we are going to use an internally rotated grip on these flies. So take the D handles and place the nylon strap between your thumb and pointer finger. Your elbows should be pointed behind you for the entirety of each rep. If performing these standing, take a few steps away from the cable stacks, press the handles into position, and then begin your set. I'm mostly performing these standing in the clips we recorded. I also usually do these standing at the gym in my own workouts. But standing can present a bit of a limiting factor, especially once the weights start getting a little heavier. Maintaining your balance can draw your focus away from nailing the form toward just trying to remain upright and in position. To remove this factor, you can just do these on a bench, but the bench presents a massive pain in the ass too. Bringing the bench over to the cables, setting up the bench in the right spot, and then having to reach to grab the first handle, and then holding that handle while you rotate and reach to grab the second handle. It's a lot to go through. If you have D handles with a longer strap, this can be helpful, but doesn't totally fix the problem. So you'll have to kind of pick your poison on this one. Unlike with dumbbells, there is tension at the top or front, in this case, of the range of motion. So bring your fists all the way together or even cross your arms over one another to get a real good contraction. On the eccentric, go far back enough to feel a stretch. Again, this is the most important part of the range of motion, so spend a little extra time in that stretched position. Give it a 1 count before initiating the next concentric phase. Our final move, the good old-fashioned push-up. For those of you who may not be able to do many push-ups, start by doing these from your knees. There is nothing wrong with doing these from the knees, and it's a great way to get better at performing the move before progressing on to push-ups from the toes. Also, let's get away from calling these girl push-ups and start calling them knee push-ups. There's plenty of guys who can't do push-ups and need to start from the knees. We all have to start somewhere. It's fine. Whether you're going from the knees or toes, we do want to do a wider hand width than you may be used to in order to make this even more pec focused. And once again, we're going to flare the elbows outward as we're performing the exercise. Make sure not to hyperextend the spine. Descend until your upper arm becomes even with your torso or just behind your torso before pressing back up. For those of you who have no problem banging out 12 push-ups from the toes, you can do a few things to make it harder. I've got two options for you, although there are a lot more. One, you can put your hand on two plates or low boxes to extend the range of motion further. You can also put your feet on a plate or low box to change the pressing angle and make it more difficult that way. You also have the option of placing a plate on your back to add weight. I like this for two reasons. One, obviously, is loading the exercise. Two, the plate isn't glued to your back. It can move, it can slide, it can jiggle. This will force you to have excellent control over each rep you perform. If you move too quickly, the plate will start moving. Now be very careful with this. I have seen clips of a plate slipping and landing on somebody's hand. You can pretty easily place the plate on your back by reaching over your head and gently setting the plate on your back as you get into position for the push-up. Or if you've got a gym buddy, you can just have them place the plate on your back. Make sure they get it on your upper back and not your lower back. And when you finish the set, go all the way to the floor and roll until the plate slides off your back. And that's it for the exercises. And once again, here's the routine. It's also down in the description for you to view. And that's it for today's video, folks. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. I will have 2 more videos in the corners for you here in a second. I'm Coach Ty with Muscle Wiki, and I will see you with the next one. Deuces.